right, Clean Freaks, welcome back again in studio with Malinda, the packaging princess herself, our 2024 sterile processing expert. And today, we wrapped up a number of episodes, Malinda, on the topic of pill packs. So we're jumping into the epic wrap battles out there with instrument wrap. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready. Are we going to wrap? I can be,
yeah,
I can be
you would win.
Biggie, you can be PG. I don't
Whatever works.
Why?
Well, yeah, so wraps, maybe let's start there. They're costing a little bit more than 50 cents these days. So that's the segue.
Well, wow,
okay.
nice.
Yeah. But to the point, it is one of the first things that technicians learn how to do in sterile processing. There's a lot of emphasis placed on the process and the technique, and yet there's still a lot of issues and misconceptions out there. So maybe start and to kick off this conversation with what are some common errors or misconceptions when it comes to wrapping in sterile processing.
All right. I was trying to think of a quick wrap in my head, but I couldn't do it. So, all right. Maybe next time. Okay.
That's right.
So one of the things that we see, well, there's multiple things that that's out in the industry that we see end users doing. Okay. So this one could go a while. So, all right. So first thing, when wrapping, so we don't need two wraps, or currently if it's bonded wrap, right? So that acts as your two layers. So I've been to some facilities where they're using two of those two bonded layers. So now you've got 4 layers. So that's not necessary, right? Just if you had a single layer, then yes, you would have to double up. That's one thing. The other thing too is when using the right size wrap, right? Making sure you're choosing the correct size wrap. AMI ST79 section 9.5 talks about wrapping. And it shows different methods of wrapping too as well. And so correct size for wrap is crucial. If your wrap is too large, and so let's say we're wrapping a 530 scope in a 45 wrap, that's that's overkill. You're gonna
get a mountain of wrap on the top of that, right?
You have so many different so many layers on there, right? And that's gonna make it so much harder for the steam to penetrate through all of those layers. Too much for the steam to get through. Then if you have your wrap that's too small, let's say you try to wrap that scope with an 18, it's way too small, right? And you'll get some coverage and just barely get it done. But the problem comes in when we're now trying to aseptically present that scope, right? Like, does that aseptically present in the OR? And no, it doesn't, I will tell you. So that's another thing. Choosing your wrap. If you have a wrap that's too large, and you're not doing your wrapping technique correctly, you can get what we call dog ears on the wrap, right? And that's just where you've got these things sticking out of the sides and steam can pull inside of those and it doesn't drain correctly. So dog ears is something you want to make sure you're paying attention to and you're doing the correct wrapping technique. Additionally, like if you're wrapping a tray, tucking the top fold underneath the tray. We see that a lot. So
this is the first fold that you're talking about.
First
and it goes
fold
over the top.
Correct. People tend to tuck that, right? And then trying to, once again, aseptically grab that. How do they do that? I've actually been in a facility in an OR where that top flap was tucked and they left a little tab. They were able to grab the tab, but when they pulled it, the whole tray fell on the floor from them pulling that. You know what type of tray it was? Synthy small frag, maybe. Guess
no.
Where those screws went, right? Like, yep, everywhere. So making sure that when you're wrapping something, you're keeping in mind, it's not just a matter of the coverage, but it's also a matter of the aseptic presentation. Am I able to do this? the end concept, right? So when you're doing your wraps, this is one of the biggest things we see. We are all taught that envelope concept where it looks like a nice envelope and it's beautiful, but is that really providing the coverage that tray needs and the correct amount of coverage we can give it? So now if you look at like HSPA and the book and stuff, and a lot of the manufacturers, they're encouraging to walk out the wrap. So meaning each flap that you do, you walk it out to line up with the edge of your tray. And then your top flap also gets walked out to line up and square off with the edges of the tray. We're giving that tray adequate protection around the whole tray. We're evening those folds out as much as possible to help with steam penetration. So this is something that we still see facilities and, people doing. And once again, it's a new concept. So trying to get people on board to understand why we're doing it is crucial.
I think, you brought up part of the debate in the industry goes back to a little bit of, we'll call it, professional pride in a good way, because you see a lot of these photos online of people that are posting their wraps, and what they're proud about is what they look like. To your earlier point, they've got really sharp corners and got sharp folds. Everything looks like a nice little birthday present. But what you may not see or what you may not know about how that wrapping is the impact of the sterility assurance. To your point, is it actually wrapped compliantly, and is it wrapped for that aseptic presentation? What would you say to folks who are in that kind of part of the scenario, maybe even like, wrapping tight? Like, you didn't really speak to that yet, but is there a problem with wrapping too tight on the other side to say, I don't want dog ears, so I'm going to have this thing, pulled over in every square ounce of energy I can to tape these things on the corner? What's the downside to that?
Yeah, of course. So, with wrapping too tight, you now have, you're making too much of, I'm not going to say there's no ability for the steam penetration to go through, but you're making it more difficult, right? And so that creates an issue. Then also with the corners, right? Pulling so tight and stuff, you got corner issues that can happen and stuff like that. So there's good and bad to all of the aspects. So that's why you need a nice middle ground, I would say. You don't want too loose, it's the Goldilocks theory, right? So, but to your point about, people, the beauty in the wrap, right? It's a technique and it's a skill that people work hard to develop. And I'm not knocking it. I'm not saying don't make your wrap pack look beautiful, but focus on the sterility first. And then at the end, you can make it prettier and, fluff it up, if you will, of how it looks, how you set it.
So let me ask you a couple quick questions here as we wrap the segment.
Love my pod.
Yeah, that's sorry. Great minds think alike here. The question of the soaker sheets or the towels in this wrapping scenario, how are we to approach those conversations?
Yeah. So, having a soaker sheet or a towel under your tray helps provide protection for the wrap, right? Those in between liners and stuff. Some people love them, some people hate them, just like corner protectors, right? It's a love or hate concept. But regardless, they do provide a level of protection for those trays and stuff. So utilizing a soaker sheet or utilizing some type of item, just making sure you have IFUs for it and that, it's made for that process, right? Because some are just made for inside a tray. Some are not made for underneath the tray concept. So making sure you understand, once again, the IFUs for things, but utilizing those can be really helpful also with the steam or the sterilant traveling through that package, right? Making sure that it helps also with the wicking and the drying of the tray as well. So there's good, to me, like utilizing a liner of some sort is really helpful. But I know some facilities, they're like, no, we're not doing it. So Just up to your facility.
So one final question here, kind of a softball. Is there ever a scenario where it's okay to cut your wrap with a pair of scissors to cut it down to size or to alter it?
Oh, no, I'm glad you asked that one. Oh, absolutely not. So I'm not aware of any IFUs for wrap manufacturers that say, yes, you can cut a wrap to fit a size. You have to order the correct size wrap. And the reason for that is the way that it's spun and woven together within the manufacturing process. You cutting it starts creating one phrase and, particles. And also it interferes with the whole concept that how it acts as a sterile barrier. So you don't want to cut wraps, period.
Okay. Well, we're going to cut the segment right there.
It's ridiculous. I love it.
Yeah. It's just going to get more punny the deeper into the season.
Wait until the dad jokes start coming. This is great.
So that was the packaging princess herself, Malinda Elammari, talking about the epic wrap battles. But we're going to continue this theme a little bit more next month when we talk about cool down for packaging. And we're going to start talking about that kind of next sterilization into the sterile storage phase. So stay tuned with us next month for that. If you're not already subscribed to YouTube or to the various channels to check out this series, make sure to do that right now. And like we told you last month, if you have more questions for Malinda, we've got her contact information in the description below. Please reach out. That's why she's here. She wants to spread this best practice far and wide. And even if it's these nuances where there's no clear black and white answer, but you just need to think through it critically, I know she'd love to help you in that phase as well. And like we tell you every time here at Beyond Clean, until we meet again, keep fighting dirt.